Hi all, let's continue looking at Rainn Wilson. In the next round he played Bobby Hall, which is the nickname on the chess.com site. Bobby Hall is actually Logic, better known as Logic. Sir Robert Bryson Hall II, better known as Logic, a rapper, streamer, content creator and author. He received actually 2 Grammy nominations for his albums and has moved on to streaming and creating content online for his fans. So let's see what happened in this game. Rainn Wilson kicked off with e4. Logic, aka Bobby Hall, plays e5. We see knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5 from Rainn Wilson, royal pairs. So bishop c5, white castles. Here, if you might be wondering, if bishop takes c6, it's not recommendable to try and win a pawn because of queen d4, and it's thought that black is actually better here. After bishop d6, for example, black has the bishop pair, which is thought to be a significant advantage in general. So, yeah, white does very well just to avoid that temptation and castle. We see a6, bishop a4, d6, rook e1, bishop g4, d3, knight f6, c3, black castles, h3, the bishop goes to h5, knight bd2, b5. So it looks like a pro game. This looks like a really high quality game. It could have been played between GMs at the moment. Bishop c2, h6, knight f1, even a fancy knight maneuver. This is great stuff. d3, d5, knight e3. We have d takes, and white actually plays kind of dynamically, accepting the possibility of double pawns, which black obliges. It's actually fine for white to do this in this particular situation. White's control over the d5 square is actually pretty important as well, and there's a potential prospect on the g-file. If the king moves, there's opportunities for white to use this structure and maybe undouble the pawns later with f4. The light square bishop has no counterpart here, and this could spring into life later. We see rook ae8, and now knight d5. Yeah, this looks like really interesting play. So it hits c7. Black actually took this, and we see e takes, which opens up that bishop. Knight e7, and now bishop e3. Better here, it seems, is a4, trying to challenge this structure, weaken it slightly. For example, this position with f4 is very, very nice for white. White should have a significant advantage here, even if there's a temporary inconvenience of having to guard b2. This structure for black, ultimately, even if d5 drops, this is better for white overall. It's more solid for white, and white has the bishop pair. So bishop e3, though, lets black in a little bit after bishop takes. It does undouble the pawns as well. Knight g6, d6, c takes, rook takes. We see knight h4, king f2, and now f5. Very good play from both sides, it has to be said. Rook g1, which carries the threat of rook takes h6. And now e4, very, very good move. We see f4. In this situation, it turns out, actually, there is an opportunity here which may have been missed. Rook takes h6, hits the knight, and controls key escape squares here. And actually, if knight takes f3, there's bishop b3 check, which is winning material. For example, rook f6. And then white can actually cash out into a winning king and pawn ending, for example, like this, because white has this winning outside pass pawn. So yeah, there was this key opportunity here to play rook takes h6 with that neat idea of bishop b3. But f4, yeah, this lets black back in a bit after king h8. Black could have also chosen here rook d8. For example, this position is very nice for black. Black would be having a big advantage there, winning that piece. So king h8, we have rook takes a6, rook e7, and now bishop b3, rook d7, and now, yeah, this is actually kind of dangerous, especially with this lurking knight coming into f3. If black doubles, this entry point d2 is actually kind of scary. White should try and reduce the impact of that here with rook d1. White played king e2. Let's have a quick look at rook d1 first. If black doubles the rooks now, white takes the impact away, and king g3, the king's actually just about safe enough. And there are resources for white to avoid getting mated. Black's king safety is more in question here. If, for example, this, and then black could get mated. So overall, this is a better continuation, just to take off one pair of rooks. But we have king e2, and now actually black's in the driving seat after this excellent move, doubling the rooks, just to go into d2. Black's actually technically better. We see rook d1, rook takes, bishop takes, knight f3, and there's good cooperation on the common square d2. Black is better, and in this difficult position, Rainn makes a mistake. He blunders a piece, king f2. It is difficult though. If rook b6, rook d2 is going to be winning a piece. If bishop b3, this is still better for black after rook d2, rook takes b2, bishop e6, g6. So yeah, this is a piece blunder in a difficult position. We see check, then a4, takes, rook takes, check, and the rook takes b2. And in fact here, black plays very, very well, restricting the king, keeping the king restricted. This is brilliant from black, brilliant play. We see rook takes f5, and now h4 check, which weaves a kind of mating net around the king. After king h5, yeah, g6. Yeah, this game has very, very strong elements in it. Both players showing great skill. This is really a step up from the previous rounds, Rainn Wilson. He's up against it. After looking at this game, you might think, oh dear, this is the end of Rainn Wilson in this tournament. Let's have a look at game 2. If Rainn Wilson can win game 2, he can force it to tiebreak. So game 2 coming up shortly. Okay, let's flip the board. So we have Rainn Wilson's perspective. He's black in game 2 against Logic, who has shown very logical chess in game 1. And yeah, a very dangerous opponent indeed. So Logic, aka Bobby Hall, nickname on the Chess.com site. So we see d6 from Rainn Wilson. Knight f3, g6 Piot's defense. Now we see knight f6, knight c3, bishop g7. So thankfully we don't see any major blunders so far in the opening. In fact, so d3, this is fine for both sides. h3, that seems very logical to deprive the pinning move, bishop g4. b6, very hypermodern. So fianchettoing both bishops. So Rainn Wilson, a hypermodernist, a fan of the hypermodernists. They found the useful exceptions to classic opening theory. And part of that, they found that fianchetto bishops are quite good to influence the center from afar. So these fianchetto bishops have pressure around the center. We see e6, which is an interesting move in this situation. Given that the bishop is on c4, this seems to be quite appropriate to aim for d4. Queen d2, and now d5. E takes, bishop b3, rook e8. And we have bishop h6, bishop h8, and now rook fe1. Rainn Wilson takes on e1, rook takes, and now plays c5. We have queen g5. This is a move which puts pressure on the d5 point. Knight bd7, and actually white falls into a kind of trap set here, actually. White actually took on d5. This is a big mistake. Rainn Wilson is a bit lucky here. Mind you, a good player is always lucky, they say, as Capablanca says. If white plays queen f4, the pressure would be quite significant on the black position. As an example, rook c8, knight g5. And here, as an example, I'm going to show you something exotic, which is behind the scenes. Queen e5 taking control of the e-file. And it's difficult for black to actually evict the queen. Because, for example, this situation is dangerous. And if ever knight h5 here, guess what white would be able to play in this kind of situation? White to play here, what would you play? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. This is just a variation, a fictional variation, but it shows something interesting about this position, in my view. So white to play, could play in this position, queen takes h8, with knight takes f7, with a big advantage. So yeah, it's a tricky situation actually. If queen f4 had been played, if white keeps control of the situation, there are ways to build up for white here, including that knight g5 move. So anyway, knight takes d5, and knight takes d5 is actually very, very good for black now after bishop takes. The thing is, queen takes, yeah, not bishop takes, which would let white have the advantage still after queen takes. No, but by playing queen takes, black's actually just won a piece here. So bishop takes, rook e7, and now after rook d8, c4, we have bishop e6, another fine move actually, trapping that rook. This is brutal stuff. After f4, we have bishop f6. Yeah, if knight takes, okay, I mean there's knight takes d8, but at least it simplifies, the position somewhat. But because of f4, now the rook's trapped with bishop f6. So black is potentially winning more material now, or simplifying. If white played knight takes, then bishop takes, knight takes, we can take here a piece up. But white actually played this, and after f takes, so black's a rook up now, not just doing very, very well, a rook up. So check, rook a1, a3, bishop takes b2, white's crumbling here. Rainn Wilson wanted an exchange of bishops. He's trying to trap the bishop now, taking off a pawn there, so there's a passed pawn here to be pushed, potentially winning another pawn. White's getting dismantled, check, bishop takes, and there's a big threat here of h5 checkmate, so white makes room for the king. So we have here not h5, king f4 still is in the game, but g takes now. And here we see a mistake, actually, rook f3, this is a mistake. It could have been taken. Yeah, slight mistake there. But anyway, king g6, rook g3 check, king takes f6, and now a5. So this is on the right track again with this passed pawn. So this passed pawn comes up the board. Okay, the rook moves, and now passed pawn's about to queen. Yep, queens. And this is a situation where you don't want to stalemate the opponent. And no, it actually leads to a checkmate here. So Rainn Wilson still in the match, making it level now for the cliffhanger final to be played at the more fast and furious time control of 5 minutes without any increment. So these games played 10 minutes with a 5-second increment. So in the tiebreaker game, in game 3 now, coming up, let's see who wins. Hi there. So back for game 3, this tiebreaker. Can Rainn Wilson win with the white pieces against the very dangerous Bobby Hall? So we see e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop c5. White castles, d6, c3, bishop g4. Now actually in this situation, h3 is actually, it's very interesting here after bishop h5. White can actually do very, very well if this next move is followed up correctly. This is actually a very, very good move in this particular situation. So that expression, it all depends, is very valuable because it gives you a license to break the so-called rules about moving the pawns around the king in general. It's thought, this is often very risky in general, unless there's a specific justification for this. But after bishop g6 there is, but unfortunately white didn't follow up. White played rook e1. White can actually play here d4, basically winning a piece. For example, like this, and then d5, and this essentially wins a piece. White can even delay winning the piece, but the piece is to be won. So that would have been a brilliant move if followed up correctly with d4. And we see here, if bishop b4, by the way, d5, again, after bishop d3, white's still winning a piece. Because if the knight moves, then we have, I hope you can spot it, 5 seconds to pause the video. You can play queen a4 check here and then win a piece. So yeah, this would have been great, but unfortunately rook e1 was played, and now there is a downside to this rule violation, this principle violation, which is why in general it's good to stick to principles, because if you don't follow up correctly, you could be punished by the opponent. But the punishment wasn't coming. Knight f6 was played, it seems, which, okay, is a good move for the moment. But really, black should be thinking about soon the move h5. Let's follow the game for a moment now. So d3 protects that e-pawn. a6, white took, takes, and now this is a mistake, bishop g5. Better is to play d4 here, and knight bd2, and then knight c4. White should be about equal, but bishop g5 is a mistake. Black could have energetically played here the move h5. This is the strongest way to try and expose the weaknesses, and if there's any meat to that general principle of not moving pawns around your king when you castle, I think it's shown here with h5 energizing the rook. So for example, knight h4, hg, this is getting precarious for white. If black castles queenside, there's a very promising attack here for black, like doubling the rooks, etc. But h6 was played, and we see bishop e3. And now black should have taken on e3 with a decent enough position, especially after h5 here. This will still be trying to melt down these weaknesses, create more weaknesses. But black played a bit of a mistake here, in my view. Black castled, allowing the pawns to be not just doubled, but trebled. This is a very bad structure. Now, sometimes the structures are okay if they give you enough piece activity and other compensation. But here, it also loses a key central pawn. Knight takes e5. And actually, after f4 as well, the f pawn had been liberated after moving the knight. White's threatening potentially to squish the bishop with f5. Brilliant move again now from white, knight a3. So with tempo to go knight c4, and this is actually, it's a really nifty looking move. I mean, white though could have played this route because there's no queen takes because knight takes. So, but that's a very interesting route, and we get this tempo gain on the queen supporting the other knight, which now frees up the f pawn without losing e5. So wonderful play, wonderful squishing play from Rainn Wilson. I didn't waste my time watching The Office. What a fantastic character in The Office, and a decent enough chess player. What more could you ask? So bishop takes f5, g takes, we see queen e7, and now knight takes c6. Black's getting dismantled. But can he convert this all the way to the win? d4, g6, queen f3, very nice move. Rook ad1. Black's trying to get some counterplay on this g file. Knight e3, white permits it, but it is weakening h5, this move. King f2, and white can start to soon share this file. We see rook g7. I mean, also interesting is knight takes e4. But knight takes f5 now, and that opportunity is lost. The queen and rook fault. Yeah, knight takes e4 is a bit too late. That's just losing another piece. And this is losing the rook. Yeah, black's in a sort of desperate mode here. And after queen g5, white just plays rook g1. The attack's been very quickly extinguished. Knight takes f7. It looks like it's curtains now. Knight takes h6, winning the queen. Brutal stuff. Super brutal. The tiger starts showing the claws, I think, in this game. Some really brilliant elements of white's play here. But I would question g4, the follow-up on g4, though. It should have been to win a piece, really, because I think we should respect our general principles to understand why they're there. They're there to avoid backfires and to avoid the possibility of really being punished severely later. So the general principle is still good, but in this specific situation, it should be used. If you're going to break that rule, that general principle, yeah, winning the piece is the great continuation here, because the king's still in the centre. It's as if black still violated a sort of philosophy, really, of chess, of putting yourself beyond defeat before going on the attack. In chess terms, the active operations of the bishop maybe should have been put on hold until black castled, because this is still quite a nasty pin. So in a way, black should have just played knight f6 and castled early. These general principles of the opening, especially, the basic philosophy, I think, of putting yourself beyond defeat before going on the attack is a really major philosophy, and from that you can extract quite a lot of specific guidelines in general. Try and develop pieces optimally, try and castle early. That's all within that philosophy. And yeah, we see black being a little bit outrageous with the bishop g4. And it's just funny that this is actually the top engine suggestion because of the specific follow-up, because the black king's in the center. So it's very interesting to actually analyze these games and look at the principles being violated. And the philosophy, the more fundamental philosophies as well, are pretty interesting. Rather than listing out rule 1, rule 2, for the openings, the actual philosophies which have been represented is interesting, in my view, to consider. But anyway, Rainn Wilson continues on his journey. So well done to Rainn Wilson, defeating Logic, who did play pretty logically in all these games. Okay. Hope you enjoyed this coverage. If you want to check out my courses, I have some courses on Udemy. Kingscrusher.tv/chess tactics is my best-selling course at Udemy. It's actually literally a bestseller label at Udemy. Yeah, it's one of the best sellers if you want to check that out. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares, subscribes, all appreciated. Thanks very much.